In die verloren rampspoed geboren. Of course, this is about the financial side of this violence and colonization. And it's an essential part of the research about independence of Indonesia. You cannot seriously do research about the end of colonialism without telling the story about the end of 315 years of economic exploitation which resulted in the Roofstaat. This is a research about the end of the colonial oppression. Colonial oppression is driven by exploitation and by stealing on a big scale. You cannot describe the end of colonial oppression without describing the end of this stealing. This end started at 1949 as a central point. You should describe it not only in your next research, but also in this research. Because the money is the beginning, the end, and the middle of a colony. Dutch Indies was considered to be a company meant to make profit. It is also, it's for that reason, it's for me unexplainable that this money issue wasn't part of your research, a separate part of your research to begin with. That is also why we are very pleased with Mr. De Vree's promise from the 13th September that the research for this year will focus on the financial side. We want to add some research question to your research. 3 possible research questions would be: how dependent was the Netherlands of the Marshall help? How dependent was the Netherlands of the 4.5 billion they wanted from Indonesia? And how much did the politionele acties really cost? This research, does it acknowledge that Indonesia paid? There's a lot of speculations about this. For example, Gisela Molemans, a journalist that wrote the book Opgevangen in Andijvielucht, claims that she found documents in the National Archive in Washington which state that Indonesia never paid. Well, you say that it's not true, do you? Or this is not true? So that Indonesia paid.
This particular one. How do we answer your paper? I mean, this is your final question?
No. This is just a question that I need to go further.
It's one of the research questions that comes up when you're trying to get the general picture of the economic history of the conflict.
So you did not research it yet, you mean? Or?
There's lots of publications on this issue, and we will certainly weigh them in. For instance, if you're discussing the Marshall Plan impact.
I'm just talking about, did Indonesia pay part of this 4.5 billion? That's not a hard question.
Well, it's a very hard question because there are several answers are possible.
Well, there's only one answer possible because we found the proof for this.
Yes, but there are several conflicting opinions on that.
There is no opinion. There is we have found evidence in the National Archive, state documents that state the exact amount of the.
And several authors have different opinions on that, and we will be very happy to take the results of your research as well. But you should, for instance, make a difference.
Do nothing.
It's just a yes or no question. Can you stop derailing?
So the question is, you don't know. Okay. We do know.
Michael.
No,
we take it very serious.
We take it very serious.
No, you do not take me serious because in the beginning I asked not to interrupt me.
Yes, but
I ask a question, yes or no, and you can start derailing immediately. No, that's not answering. That's derailing. Yes or no would be sufficient.
No.
This is not an exam. This is an
contrary. I only wanted to say that the question.
You can respond later.
How much later?
When I'm done. Yeah, I'm sorry, but you are the ones that put pressure on the time and wanted us to do all this in 2 hours. So don't steal my time. It's your turn later.
But do you have your answer now?
They don't know.
It's not a yes or no answer. Why Why is it not? It is paid or it is not paid.
Did Indonesia pay or not?
Michael, please continue your story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please continue your story.
Okay. I can tell you they did.
Good.
We have several documents that state that Indonesia paid loyally, and we have documents that show exactly what the amount was right before they stopped the RTC treating payments. Also, we know that the Netherlands, by guessing and by fraud actually, by a person named Hirschfeld, came to the amount of 6.5 billion because the Netherlands assumed that Indonesia would not pay the debts that they had at that moment. To ensure themselves that the Netherlands would get that money, they demanded billions of guilders too much in the RTC treaty. This guessing was also most likely the reason that Indonesia started nationalizing these companies. Indonesia discovered that these politionele acties were much more expensive than were estimated by Cochrane, who estimated 2 billion, which they took off the demands for the RTC. That means that Indonesia paid too much with their payments for the RTC treaty. To ensure themselves to get the money they paid too much, they started nationalizing and freezing the payments that they promised and stopped the RTC.